Why meditate? Buddhism's hidden answer. Wherever there are effects, there always have to be causes. The world we experience comes from the heart as its cause. If the heart is good, the world will have to be good. If the heart is bad, the world will have to be bad. The mind, when it's not with the body in the present, is world. When it's with the body in the present, it's Dhamma. If it's world, it has to be as hot as fire. If it's Dhamma, it's as cool as water. Don't be complacent. Remind yourself that we're all being chased out of the world day by day. In other words, aging rears up, illness roars, and death runs up the score. So don't be oblivious, partying around with your defilements. Associate with the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha until your mind develops right concentration. That way you won't have anything to fear from the dangers of the world. Believing other people is all right, but it's not really special. It's like borrowing money. We'll have to share the return on our investment with our lenders. When we don't yet know, can't yet have any real conviction in ourselves, and still have to believe what other people say, it's like being an infant who has to depend on its parents. If we don't get stronger, we'll have to keep being nursed all the way through old age. If we don't try to train the mind until it's firm and unwavering, it won't give rise to the strength of concentration and we'll have to keep on being a child. When we're able to shake off all the issues in the mind, leaving just the mind in and of itself, 3 gems will appear in it. The gem of the Buddha, the gem of the Dhamma, and the gem of the Sangha. Once these 3 gems appear within us, we won't have to load ourselves down by carrying around much of anything else. Simply put them under your arm if you like, or even up your nose. When you have this kind of wealth, your mind can be light, and noble treasures will arise within you. In other words, conviction in the qualities of the Buddha will appear within the mind. Then you practice in line with those qualities until you gain the various results they have to offer. You'll see the true Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha in your heart. If you try to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha on the outer level, you're going to die for sure. The Buddha on the outer level entered Nibbana a long time ago. The Dhamma on the outer level is just letters in books. The Sangha on the outer level is the monks with shaven heads and yellow robes that you see roaming all over the country. If you try to hold on to these things, it's like carrying a heavy hoe that won't do you any good. But if you hold on to the virtues of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha within you, and then put them into practice, you'll realize that what you're looking for is right here in the heart. And then what do you want? To return to the human state, to attain a heavenly state, to attain Nibbana, or go to hell. They're all possible without your having to look for them anywhere else. The Buddha taught that the 5 aggregates are a heavy burden because they all get to the point where we can't bear carrying them around anymore and have to throw them down in the mud. If you don't keep cleansing them, they keep getting heavier and heavier. If you then try to go depending on other people, you weigh them down and you yourself are helpless. This is because stashing things away in the heart is like taking pictures without ever developing the film. What you eat gets put on the film. What you say gets put on the film. What you hear gets put on the film. But that's as far as it gets. On the film. You've never stopped to look at what kind of pictures you have, pretty or ugly. If you want to see your pictures, you have to take the film into the dark room by closing your eyes and practicing concentration, attaining the first jhana, directing your thoughts to the present and evaluating it until you can see yourself clearly. If you don't go into the dark room now, someday the King of Death is going to blindfold you, tie up your feet and hands, and drag you into his dark room. In other words, when you're on the verge of death, you won't be able to open your mouth or eyes. Nobody will be able to feed you. You'll want to eat but won't be able to eat. You'll want to speak but won't be able to speak. Your ears will get closed off so that you can't hear anything clearly. You won't be able to see your parents, family, children, or grandchildren. You won't be able to tell them your last wishes. That's called the dark room of the king of death. The mind is the only thing that senses pleasure and pain. The body has no sense of these things at all. It's like taking a knife to murder someone. They don't hunt down the knife and punish it. They punish only the person who used it to commit murder. If your mind isn't good, then the goodness of your actions isn't really good, and the goodness of your words isn't really good either. You have to develop power within yourself, like stocking up on gunpowder. If a gun has no gunpowder, it can't be used to destroy anything. People who have to be servants are the ones who lack the power to be anyone else's boss. As for the people who have that power, all they have to do is point their fingers, and other people will jump up and run. If we don't develop our own powers, we'll have to be servants, slaves to defilement throughout time. The body is like a knife. If you have a knife but don't keep sharpening it, it will get coated thick with rust. In the same way, if you have a body, physical elements, aggregates, and sense media, but don't train it and keep it polished, it'll get coated thick with defilements. If it were a gun, it wouldn't even kill a fly. Normally, the mind doesn't like to stay where it is. It keeps flowing out the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, like a river that splits into 5 streams instead of flowing as one. In a river like that, the force of the current is weakened and can't run at full strength. In addition to flowing out the 5 senses, the mind also leaks out through thoughts of the past and future, instead of staying firm in the present. This is why the mind has no peace or strength, because it never gets to rest. When the mind loses strength, the body loses strength as well and won't be able to succeed at anything. If the mind doesn't stay with the body in the present and instead wanders around exposed to external perceptions, it's bound to get into all sorts of difficulties, just like a person who doesn't stay in his house and instead goes running around outside. He's bound to be exposed to sun and rain, and he may get run over by a car or bitten by a rabid dog. If we stay in our home, then even though there may still be some dangers, they won't be too serious, and we won't get into difficulties. When the mind isn't quiet, it's like running around with a flaming torch. You're bound to burn yourself. Only when you stop running will you be able to cool down. People who accumulate merit but don't develop the heart's foundation are like people who own land but don't have a deed. They might be able to sell it for money, but they're an easy mark for a swindler because they don't have any firm basis for their claim. If you practice generosity and virtue but not meditation, the heart's foundation, it's like taking a bath on a hot day only from the waist down. If you don't bathe all the way from the head on down, you won't get totally refreshed because the coolness doesn't go all the way to the heart. External merit, generosity, and virtue is like the skin of a fruit. Internal merit, meditation, is like the flesh of the fruit. You can't have one without the other. If fruit doesn't have skin, its flesh won't grow. If it has skin but no flesh, you can't eat it. Each helps the other, but they differ in quality. External merit is what protects internal merit, while the internal merit nourishes merit outside. Today I'm going to talk about how to drill a well. This is a difficult skill, not like simply digging or plowing. We all want happiness, but we don't really know what happiness is. Real happiness is nothing other than the inner worth and skillfulness of the heart. So where are we going to find inner worth? Inner worth is like a well. The first kind of well is simply a depression in the ground for catching rainwater, like a pond. We can't get too much use out of this kind of well because there are times when water buffaloes, cattle, and other animals get in the water to bathe and drink, making it muddy. If you want to use the water, you have to filter it many times. This kind of well is like generosity, which gives only shallow rewards, like the water in a shallow depression. The second kind of well is like a deep reservoir. Cattle can't bathe or drink in it. The only animals that go into the reservoir are toads and frogs. But even so, if we want to use the water, we have to filter it first. This kind of well is like the virtue of observing the precepts, which gives deeper rewards than generosity. The third kind of well is an artesian well with a constantly running spring. No matter how much water you use, it never runs dry. This kind of well is so deep that even mosquitoes, your defilements, can't get down into the water. To drill this kind of well, you need to use a drill with a diamond bit and a strong steel shaft if you want to reach the underground water. This kind of well is like meditation because you have to use strong mindfulness, discernment, persistence, and endurance if you want to succeed at drilling. Mindfulness has to be like the diamond bit, and endurance, the steel shaft. When you use your persistence to drill on down, the results will arise as inner worth and skillfulness that keep flowing in, bathing the mind, like the waters of immortality that provide the mind with a constant stream of refreshment and delight. If we don't have a safe place for our inner worth, how is it going to help us? It's like raising horses or cows but not fencing in a place for them to stay. If they go wandering off, it's your fault, not theirs. If you don't practice virtue, concentration, and discernment on your own, you're going to get taken in by the symbols of refuge and never get to the real thing. The symbols of refuge are Buddha images, which are just symbols of the Buddha, Buddhist texts, which are symbols of the Dhamma, and Buddhist monks and nuns, who are symbols of those who have practiced rightly and well until becoming noble disciples. If you get stuck on the outer level, you'll never meet with the real thing. Inner worth is like money. If your pocket has a hole, it'll let your money slip right through. If you do things that give rise to inner worth but don't keep that worth in your heart, it won't stay with you. When you're about to die and you call on it to help you, what will there be to answer your call? When this is the case, you can't criticize all the good things you've done for not helping you. You have to put the blame on yourself. If you stick $1 in your pocket but your pocket is torn, then when the time comes to buy a cup of coffee, you won't have any money to buy it. In that case, what are you going to blame? The money or your pocket? To practice meditation is like harvesting your crop of inner worth and eating it. If you don't harvest it, it'll spoil. If you eat it in time, it'll nourish your body. If you don't eat it in time, it'll go to waste. If you don't take your inner worth into your heart, you'll never feel full. Generosity is something that poor people can't practice, but crazy people can. Virtue is something that crazy people can't practice, but poor people can. As for meditation, everyone can practice it, no matter what their age, sex, or station in life. A mind without concentration is like a pile of wooden posts left lying on the ground for people and animals to step all over. But if we stand the posts up and plant them in the soil, we can get good use out of them. Even if they're not tall, only a meter or so, but we put them close together in a line, we can fence in our yard and prevent people and animals from coming in and traipsing all over our property. It's the same with the mind. If we take a firm stance and concentration as the heart's foundation, keeping our mindfulness and alertness close together in line, we can keep defilements from slipping into the mind and making it soiled. The Dhamma is something constant and true. The reason we don't see the truth is because we're always on the move. If we're riding in a car, we can't clearly see the things that pass nearby us on the road, such as how big the stones on the ground are, their color or shape. We look at trees and mountains, and they all seem to be on the move. If we've been in a car since birth, without stopping to get out and walk around on our own, we're sure to think that cars run, trees run, and mountains run. What we see isn't in line with the truth. The running is in us, in the car, not in the mountains and trees. Whoever develops concentration will end up with 3 eyes. In other words, your outer left eye will see good things, your outer right eye will see bad things, and they'll send them into the inner eye, which will remain normal. You'll also have 3 ears. Your outer left ear will hear praise, Your outer right ear will hear criticism, and they'll send them into the inner ear, which will stay normal. This is how you can receive all the guests the world sends your way. As for the eye of the mind, intuitive insight, it will receive your defilements. Once it really understands them, it will be able to send them packing. That way, you'll be able to live in the world without suffering. If you really apply yourself, you can accomplish all kinds of things even with a single pocket knife. In the same way, if you really apply yourself to making the mind still, you can get much better results than a person who studies and memorizes hundreds and thousands of texts. Making the mind still is something we can all do. If it were beyond our powers, the Buddha wouldn't have taught us to do it. The paths and fruitions leading to Nibbana aren't the property of stupid people, and they don't belong to smart people either. They belong to those who are true and really determined in developing goodness for themselves. The body is like a mountain containing all kinds of minerals. There's gold, silver, and diamond ore buried here in this rock, i.e., the unconditioned is in here. And there's also the conditioned, which is like trees, weeds, dirt, and rocks where all sorts of people and animals, monkeys, tigers, and elephants dwell. As for the gold and silver, they're not a dwelling place for animals at all. So if we act like monkeys, tigers, and elephants, we'll meet up with nothing but trees, weeds, dirt, and rocks. We'll never meet up with things of value like silver or gold. To act like monkeys means that we never apply ourselves to anything. We wander everywhere, with no fixed place to eat or sleep, swinging from branch to branch as we feel like it. What this means is that our minds have no firm place to stay, no concentration. We wander here and there in the past and future in our thoughts and moods, with no time to stop and stay in place. This is what it means to act like a monkey. As for tigers, they're violent and fierce. This stands for the anger that arises in the human heart and erupts outward, smothering whatever goodness we may have. As for elephants, they like to hear nothing but sweet words and praise. They can't take criticism at all. This is like people who, when they do something wrong, can't stand to be told that it's wrong. If they do something right and get a little praise, they smile until their cheeks hurt. This is what it means to be like an elephant. So we have to get rid of the monkeys, tigers, and elephants in ourselves so that we can turn into human beings. That way we can look at our mountain and realize that if we want valuable things, we'll be able to get valuable things out of it. If we want worthless things, we'll get worthless things out of it. We can then gather all kinds of treasures. We can level the dirt and turn it into fields. We can take the rocks and extract the silver and gold. As for the trees, we can cut them down and turn them into firewood or charcoal so that we can cook our food and fire our smelter, or else turn them into posts and boards so that we can build ourselves a home. All of these things we'll be able to get from our mountain, but we have to apply ourselves and really be persistent. If we want silver and gold, we have to set up a smelter and heat the rocks to see which elements are there in a pure form, the unconditioned, and which ones are mixed, the conditioned. This is how we do it. 1. We have to get a lot of fuel. 2. We have to set up a furnace. And 3. We have to start a fire. Only then will we be able to extract the ore from our rock. Finding lots of fuel means being willing to let go of things both inside and out. As for setting up a furnace, we have to find a place with good, solid ground and a roof that doesn't leak. This stands for our persistence. Once we've got our furnace, we start a fire. This refers to the ardency of our practice. Once our practice is ardent, the various elements in our rock, the body, will melt and separate out on their own, just as when they melt down minerals, the silver, lead, and tin, etc., will separate out on their own. The same holds true with the body. When it undergoes ardent inspection by the mind, the pure ore and the various impurities will separate out of their own accord. But most meditators nowadays want to separate things out even before they've put their rock into the smelter. They think things out on their own without a single one of the tools needed for smelting. No fuel, no furnace, no fire, a leaky roof, and a piece of caved-in ground. What are they going to smelt? They say that the transcendent has to be like this, insight meditation has to be like that, stream entry has to be like this. You have to let go like this and that in order to reach this and that stage. The stages of once returning, non-returning, and arahantship have to be reached in this and that way. The 4 levels of jhana have to be done in this and that way. They try to separate things out in line with their own ideas, but no matter how much they try, they can't get things to separate because they don't have any fuel, any fire, any furnace. Where are they going to get any results? Results don't come from thinking. They come from the qualities we build into the mind. So don't try to separate things out in line with your own notions. Some people see a person carrying a big hunk of rock to his home and think that he's a stupid fool. First of all, the rock is heavy, and besides, what can there be of any value in a plain old rock? So they take a shovel to the mountain to dig up only the silver and gold. Not too much, just some tiny light nuggets to wrap up and carry back home in a cloth. But they end up with nothing at all because the nuggets they want are firmly embedded in the mountain. They'll need more than a shovel to get them out. As for the stupid person, as soon as he gets home, he clears out a space, builds a furnace, gathers fuel, starts a fire, and throws the rock in. When the rock is subjected to strong heat, the various ores in the rock will begin to melt and to separate. The silver will come seeping out and go one way, the gold another, the tin and lead another, the diamond another, without getting mixed. This way, the stupid person will be able to choose the silver, gold, and diamond as he likes. As for the people who think they're intelligent, who know that this is this and that is that you have to reach this level before you can reach that level, that concentration is like this, insight meditation is like that, the transcendent is like this. In the end, they have nothing to swallow but their own saliva. They gain no valuables at all. The person who thinks he's stupid when he encounters something has to keep contemplating, reflecting, digging away until he comes to an understanding. If we want happiness, we have to give rise to the causes. 1. Gather a lot of fuel. What this means is that we're willing to give up the sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, and ideas within ourselves, as well as being generous with outside things by making donations, observing the precepts, and practicing meditation. This is how we burn away our defilements through the perfection of generosity, kagaparami. The perfection of generosity is excellent fuel for roasting our defilements. 2. Set up a furnace. This stands for the effort we put into abandoning physical pleasure and sitting in meditation, thinking of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha as a way of calming the mind. Then we keep pumping the breath into the body, in the same way that they pump air into a furnace for casting a bronze Buddha image. We make the heart steady and firm, with mindfulness and alertness constantly in control. This way, the inner fire of our ardency will get stronger and stronger. As we keep pumping the breath in, the sense of inner light will get brighter and brighter. Once you're able to keep this up, gather your body and mind together into one. Don't try to crack or divide them up at all, for that's the way of a fool who thinks he knows everything beforehand. As the fire of our ardency keeps getting stronger, the various elements in the body will melt and separate out of their own accord. When you practice the Dhamma, don't worry about how it's going to go. Don't try to plan or arrange things to go this way or that. When the fire of your practice reaches full strength, all the various impurities will fall away on their own, leaving just the pure ore. The rock clinging to the ore, the various hindrances, nivarana, will fall away from the heart. But if your furnace is full of holes, the fire will flicker outside and the heat inside will dissipate. You won't be able to burn away the heart's various impurities, so you have to learn how to act like a person making charcoal. 3. Start a fire. When people make charcoal, they start their fire and then close off their furnace. That is, we close off our senses, leaving just a tiny air vent, that is, our nose. With the furnace entirely closed off in this way, the wood they place in the furnace won't burn up or turn into ashes. When they finally open the furnace, they'll find hard, high-quality charcoal. In the same way, once we can remember our meditation word without getting distracted, the closing off of the furnace means that we close off the various perceptions that register by way of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and intellect. We close off the hindrances and don't let the mind flicker out after outside perceptions. Once everything is closed off in this way, the wood will keep smoldering away in the furnace. When the time comes to open it up, we'll find that there are no ashes and that we've ended up with good, hard charcoal of high quality. The solid goodness we develop in the heart is like charcoal that we can then use to smelt our ore. This way, the elements within us will gain strength, able to separate themselves into the conditioned and the unconditioned. Once we give rise to the 4 stages of jhana, unskillful mental states, the rock, will separate out and fall away. Sensual desire will separate out ill will, torpor, and lethargy, restlessness and anxiety, and uncertainty will all separate out and fall away. The mind will be totally absorbed in jhana, with directed thought and evaluation in charge. Just this is enough for insight to arise. We'll be able to see clearly what's diamond, what's silver, and what's gold. The silver is the sense of fullness or rapture. The gold is the sense of pleasure and ease that arises within. Once there's pleasure, no disturbances will appear in the mind, like a burning lantern when there's no wind to disturb the flame. This is the light of the Dhamma, Dhammopadipo, or the brilliance of discernment, Paññappahoto, that is, insight meditation, arising. We'll see the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha within. The heart will give rise to treasures. This is like setting up a furnace and using charcoal to smelt ore. The various elements in the rock will separate out, leaving the unconditioned. Insight meditation is the fire we use to heat the rock. If we want things to separate out like this, we have to use insight meditation. Don't try to separate things out on your own. Whatever is going to turn into light, ashes, charcoal, or smoke will do so of its own accord. This is how we get past the conditioned. The unconditioned will separate out to one side, the conditioned to another. This way we'll get to see what's really true. But however things separate out, you have to keep using your discernment even further. If you get attached to good things, they can backfire on you. If you get attached to bad, you've gone wrong. How and why? We meditate. We start with thoughts of goodwill to remind ourselves of why we want to meditate. We want to find a happiness that's reliable, that doesn't harm us or anybody else. That's why we spread goodwill both to ourselves and to all beings, to remind ourselves that we're looking for a special kind of happiness. Then, when we're clear about why we're doing it, we settle down to business. Here, the business is watching your breath. Take a couple of good, long, deep in and out breaths and notice where you feel the breathing in the body. You feel the passage of air through the nose, but you also feel the rise and fall of the chest, sometimes the rise and fall of the abdomen or the shoulders. Notice where the feeling of breathing is most pronounced. Allow your attention to settle there and keep it there all the way through the in-breath, all the way through the out, and even in the moments between the breaths. As you breathe in, notice if there's any unnecessary tension in that part of the body. It may be that the breath is too long, so that as you get toward the end of the breath, it's beginning to feel uncomfortable. Well, allow the breath to grow shorter, Or if it's too short and you feel like you're not really getting the full energy of the breath, allow it to stretch out a bit. In other words, experiment with the breathing to see what feels best. If you find something that feels good, stick with it. It may feel good for a long time, or it may feel good for just a little while and then not so good anymore. In that case, try changing it again. Try to keep on top of what the body needs. The purpose here is twofold. 1, to get the mind to settle down in the present moment, and 2, to be observant. The breath is one of the few bodily functions that you can actually change consciously, so try to take advantage of that fact, both for the settling down and for the being observant. If the breath feels good and you find it interesting to notice how the way you breathe has an impact on how the body feels, that helps you to stay in the present moment. You start learning about what the breath is doing, and as you learn about the breath, you're going to be able to learn about the mind as well. Because ultimately, the breath is not the problem. The real problem lies in the mind. We all want happiness, and yet we choose to do things that can lead to pain, for ourselves or for other people. So there's a disconnect. The question is, where exactly is the disconnect, and why? Sometimes it's because we don't have a very clear knowledge of what our intentions are, or it may be because we don't really see the connection between our actions and their results. So, starting with the breath, notice what your intention is. You're here for the sake of happiness. You're here to learn how to train the mind so that it doesn't create a lot of problems. And of course, not every part of your mind is going to be cooperative. Some parts are going to wander away with other agendas. So for the time being, you just let them go. In other words, you don't have to get entangled with them. Just notice that there are other thoughts in the mind, not connected with the breath, but you don't have to follow them. That right there is an important insight. You don't have to run after everything that comes up in the mind. Then stick with the breath as long as you can and see what impact it has on the mind and on the body. This is the part of the practice that requires some conviction. It's like making scrambled eggs. The right way to make scrambled eggs is to keep the heat really low. You stand there, stirring the eggs in the pan, and nothing seems to be happening. You feel a very strong temptation to turn up the heat to speed things up, but you have to resist that temptation. Just keep on stirring and stirring and stirring, and after a while the eggs really do begin to coagulate on the bottom of the pan. It's in the period when you don't see any immediate results coming that you need to have the conviction that the cookbook was right. It's the same with the meditation. There are times when you sit in meditation and nothing much seems to be happening. And so you need the conviction to stick with it to give it time to do its work. This is why we have the chants on the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha prior to the meditation, to remind ourselves that this path we're following here is not a brand new path. It's not something we just recently cooked up. In fact, the Buddha himself said he didn't invent the path, he discovered an old path. There had been Buddhas before him, awakened people before him, and this is the same path they all discovered. We have all of the Buddha's awakened disciples guarantee that, yes, this path does work, so you just stick with it. Part of the mind will complain because, of course, the mind still has its greed, aversion, and delusion. It's not the case that you sit down, close your eyes, and they all go away. They hide out for a while, but they're going to come up again. And they're going to complain. They'd rather do this, think that, go here, go there. Just remind yourself that you've been following greed, aversion, and delusion for who knows how long. They do provide some pleasure, but there's usually a lot of pain that goes along with that pleasure. And they leave you holding the bag. And you've been falling for their tricks again and again and again. How about trying something new for you at least, something different? So you just stick with the breath, stick with it, stick with it. As the Buddha said, patient endurance is what burns away a lot of the issues in the mind. It doesn't solve all the problems. The ultimate problems are going to require very refined discernment. You develop that discernment from your right effort as you practice. So, to develop right effort as a beginning step, you use whatever cruder skills you have at your disposal: conviction, patience, your stick-to-itiveness. Now, that can get very old very quickly if you don't have something of interest. That's why we emphasize working with the breath. When the breath gets comfortable, the next step is to think of that sense of comfortable breath spreading through different parts of the body. When we talk of breath here, it's not air coming in and out. It's the movement of energy in the body, which is what gets the air to come in and out to begin with. Without that energy, nothing would come in and out at all. So notice, when you breathe in, where do you feel the energy flow in the body? If you're really sensitive, you find that it goes throughout every nerve in your body, from the top of the head, down to the feet, down the shoulders, down the arms, all through the torso, deep into the head, all around. There's even an energy that surrounds the body. So try to make yourself as sensitive as possible to the energy that's happening right here. If you can't feel it everywhere, focus on the areas where you can feel it, where it's most blatant. Eventually, as your sensitivity develops, you'll notice it in areas where you never sensed it before. You'll start to realize that many of the sensations you are familiar with are actually breath sensations. As with any delicate task, this takes time. But if you have something with which to entertain yourself, you find it easier to stick with the task. Here, the entertainment is actually part of the work. We've talked about working with the breath. We can also talk about playing with it. It can actually be fun. Start noticing that there are spots, say in your spine, where there's a lot of tension, but if you consciously relax the tension, a sense of flow will go through. It feels a lot more refreshing. You may find that releasing one spot of tension in the body has a chain reaction effect, so that other areas of tension in the body begin to relax as well. This is something that's fun to explore. You may notice that the way you hold your body will change. When the flow of the breath energy in the body is improved, this is going to be good for your posture, good for your health. This is medicine that doesn't cost you anything at all. And as for the work, try to spread your awareness to fill the whole body, so that eventually you'll be aware of the whole body all the time through the in-breath, all the time through the out. That broadens the range of your awareness, and you begin to see things happening in the mind that you didn't see before. They were hidden in a blind spot because the range of your awareness was very narrow. But as you allow the awareness to broaden out, you begin to see little bits and snatches of thoughts here and there. You can catch sight of the mind's decisions. Usually, in an ordinary mind, there are several conversations going on at once. You may be paying attention to one or two, but there are others going on as well. Every now and then you slip in, add a little something, and then slip right out. Then you can deny what you just did, telling yourself that you didn't do any of that slipping around at all. This is one of the reasons why we don't see the connection between our actions and the suffering we cause. There's a fair amount of denial going on in the mind. But when your range of awareness is all around like this, it's harder to maintain that denial, and it's better for you that you don't. You can begin to see what's going on, and you're in a position to do something about it. Some unskillful thoughts in the mind can hang on simply because you're not paying attention to them. When you see them clearly, it's very easy to let them go. There are others, though, that are going to require more work. What the Buddha calls exerting a fabrication or fabricating an exertion. He uses both phrases. What they both mean is that you have to do some conscious work in order to understand why you're stuck on this particular kind of action or kind of thinking. Then you make the effort to provide the mind with an alternative, a more skillful alternative to the way you've been thinking. And it turns out that the way you breathe is very intimately connected with all of this. It's called bodily fabrication. As I said, it's one of the few functions in the body that you can intentionally change. So you work with that and put it to use. Suppose that anger comes up in the mind. One of the first things you can do about it is to notice where in the body is the tension that goes along with the anger. Then try to breathe through it. Think of the breath energy as just dissolving that tension away, allowing it to dissipate out into the air, so you don't have to keep carrying it around, or you don't feel burdened with the need to get it out in your words or your deeds. As you're working with the breath, you also become sensitive to two other kinds of fabrication the Buddha talked about. One is called verbal fabrication, which is the way the mind talks to itself. It directs its thoughts to a particular topic, and then it starts evaluating the topic and deciding what it likes and what it doesn't like, what it wants to do and doesn't want to do with regard to that topic. When you're working with the breath, you're engaging in just that kind of verbal fabrication. You become more conscious of it. You realize that you can change the way you talk to yourself about things, especially when you start getting new perspectives about what's going on in the present moment as to what's going on in the mind and what's going on in the body. Then there's what the Buddha calls mental fabrication, which are the perceptions, the labels we apply to things, along with feelings, feeling tones of pleasure, pain, and neither pleasure nor pain. And again, as you're working with the breath, you get hands-on experience in how you can shape these things and use them to shape the state of your mind. When you stick with the breath, you're also holding a particular perception of the breath in mind. If you think of the breath simply as the air coming in and out of the nose, that influences how you're going to breathe and the way you experience the breath. But if you think about the energy in the body as being breath, then it can go anywhere in the nervous system. It can go through anything at all. That gives you another perception. It's going to change the way you actually experience the breath. You can start to think of all those little tiny nerve endings going all the way out to the pores of your skin. They've got breath energy too. If you hold that perception in mind, how does that change the way you breathe? How does it change the way you feel in the present moment? Does it feel more pleasant? If not, what other perception of breathing can you think of that would? So, as you focus on working and playing with the breath, you're getting some conscious experience in learning how to manipulate what the Buddha calls bodily fabrication, verbal fabrication, and mental fabrication to create a sense of ease within the body and mind. Then you can use those same fabrications to deal with whatever else comes up in the mind. For the time being, you don't want to get too involved in analyzing any distracting thoughts. Work on using these three types of fabrication to make your concentration as solid as you can. After a while, though, as you get skilled at these types of fabrication and you feel solid in the present moment, you can turn and look at whatever in the thought seemed so attractive. You can start analyzing the thought in terms of the three types of fabrication. How are you breathing in relation to the thought? What things are you saying to yourself that give rise, say, to greed or aversion or delusion? What are the perceptions or mental labels lying behind these thoughts? And what kind of feelings surround them? Can you change those things? Fabricate something different so that when an incident comes up in your life that you would normally react to with anger, can you refabricate your reaction? Something that would give rise to lust. Can you refabricate that so that the aversion, the anger, the lust don't hold any appeal? Two things help to cut through that appeal. First, simply having access to a greater sense of well-being as you work with the breath and play with the breath gives the mind sense of hunger, just wanting some action, wanting some entertainment, less of an edge. Second, you see that the way you normally react is optional. It's causing stress that doesn't need to be there. You see that you're creating an awful lot of the situation just by the way you're looking at it, and if it's causing stress, well, why not look at it in a different way? Why not breathe around it in a different way? Perceive it in a different way? Evaluate it in a different way? These are some of the lessons you can learn by working and playing with the breath like this, allowing the mind to become more firmly settled in the present and to see things a lot more clearly. You come to understand this process of how you fabricate your experience, and you can use that understanding to eliminate all the stress that the fabrication creates for the mind. This is one of the Buddha's major insights. There's an analysis of suffering and stress called dependent co-arising, which describes all the different factors that, based on ignorance, give rise to stress and suffering. Half of them, including the 3 types of fabrication, come prior to sensory contact. Even before you see something or hear something, the mind is already primed to create suffering out of it if it's operating under the power of ignorance. What we're doing here is learning how to bring knowledge to those processes so that we're no longer priming ourselves for suffering and stress. We're priming ourselves to put an end to it, which is in line with our original intention. We want to be able to see why the actions we do for the sake of happiness end up leading to stress, and how we can change those ways so that we can actually act in a way that leads to true happiness. We break things down into very simple components so that we can manage them. We realize that this is a problem we can manage. That's the good news of the Buddha's teachings, that even though we may be causing ourselves stress and suffering, we can put an end to it. If our suffering really were caused by things outside that were beyond our power, then there'd be no hope. Or if it were caused by things we were doing that we couldn't change, there'd be no hope either. But here, we're making choices. We're probably not making them all that wisely, but we do have some wisdom. We do have some discernment. It's just a matter of applying it, giving it a foundation here in the present moment, and then really using it to look carefully to see where are we creating unnecessary stress and suffering for ourselves. What can we do to change? It's by using our wisdom and discernment with these basic, immediate things, exercising them with these questions that they develop and grow. When the mind is well settled and well centered like this, it fosters a sense of well-being. That sense of well-being is important. If, when you're feeling down on yourself and you're already feeling uncomfortable inside, you'll do nothing but criticize yourself, and that can be a dead end. But when the mind feels at ease, with a sense of fullness and well-being here in the present moment, then you can bring up the fact that you've got some habits here that are not all that skillful, and you're in the mood to tell yourself, let's do something about them. The mind is then a lot more willing to listen and to work on the problem. So these are our basic skills. These are our basic components into which we break things down so that we can understand how we can put them back together in a better way. Then the things that we tend to cling to, the habits we tend to fall into over and over again that are leading to suffering and stress, we can take them apart. We can then put everything back together again in a better way that turns into a path that, unlike our normal life, doesn't just keep going around and around and around and around in feedback loops. This is a path that actually goes someplace that's really worth going to. And here again, this is where conviction is important. The state the Buddha described as health, nibbana, is something he can't pull out of his heart to show to us. So we're not in a position where we can wait to accept things only when we know them for sure. We have to bring some conviction to what he says. On the one hand, we have to take his word for it when he talks about the kind of commitment it requires. On the other hand, he doesn't have the role of being a God who can tell us what we have to do. But he does say he's an expert in putting an end to suffering. That requires some conviction on our part. But it's not a conviction devoid of reason. What he says is very reasonable. But to follow him requires a lot of commitment. It's a path that requires an awful lot of attention and a lot of persistence, patience. You really do have to commit yourself to this. We're working on a big problem, and it takes time and effort to break the big problem down to manageable bits so we can understand. Oh, this is why I've been doing this all along. And here's an alternative. So the path does ask a lot, but it offers a lot as well. And if you think of the alternative, just continuing to suffer again and again in your old ways, It makes sense to give this path a sincere and serious try.